Invite.
We are live.
We are live. I need to have the committee settled down. Committee, if you wanna go, I'll pick up 3 more bills tonight. I have 6 up there still. We are going to have to get them out of here tomorrow. Is H10 still up there? No, we have another one?
Well, and H10 is still up here.
Okay, we did H10, so you can move that. We put the sunset.
We moved H55, but we are gonna let H10 sit.
We're gonna let it sit. So the ones that have come to us are the 7. Okay,
My impression is, I don't know though, this is what we have received.
that's what we have received so far. Hopefully the download is slow. But we will have to get them out tomorrow night because some of them have to go to our codes. We got the ones out that I was told we had to get out. Now we're back to the ed bill or the yield bill. And I think I have figured out some of the problem. I don't think it's your amendment. On the website and the bill as it got voted out has the House's study for the future of education on it. That's because at 9:30 on Friday night, we couldn't deal with it. We came back on Monday, and so on our amendment, we have our study committee, which is the finance study committee, and then we have the House version. So we've got 1A and I think it's 1B. We have the Senate Ed version. We are putting in place of the House version. So we are doing the Senate version in our amendment, which I think got handed out, maybe not, it will get handed out tomorrow. But that's essentially what's in our amendment. Everything, all the other things, all the money things we did Friday evening. But those 2 studies are in the amendment, so that's why the House amendment is posted on the website. Because until we amend it, it's there. Okay, your amendment.
Okay, question, do you have a copy? Would you like a copy?
We do not,
Okay,
we do not go.
It's on the committee.
there you go.
It's on the committee
Oh, you
page.
know what, I need one. I give you my own thing.
Okay, it is on the committee page.
Okay, well, thank you all for hearing my amendment. I am bringing this amendment forward because it seems to me that there is a what I would consider to be an error in the way that the formula is structured right now, in that it is applied to sending districts rather than receiving districts. And what I mean by that is that if a district does not have a school, let's say they have no school, and so they tuition out all of their kids. What that means is that they are paying some fixed tuition rate, right, which does not change, but they are still getting the benefit potentially of different weighting. And so as a result, they are getting a benefit for actually not operating a school. And that to me seems not logical, right? Like we should be benefiting the districts that are actually spending the money to educate the kid rather than the district that is sending the student in the absence of a school district. And as a result, what this means is that districts that don't have schools are subsidized by districts that do have schools. And so that is problematic. And you actually have a memo to this regard from Tammy Colby, who invented the pupil weighting from last Thursday, which is supportive of this change. My thinking around this as well is like, I know you all are very concerned about cost containment, support that, fair enough. But I think if we're going to do proper cost containment, then we need to be incentivizing, the right actions. We should be, punishing the right people and incentivizing the right people. And right now, as it's structured, it actually incentivizes districts to not have a school. It incentivizes them to close, their schools. And that actually rewards some of the highest spending districts, for not operating a school. That, I think is the bulk of what I wanted to say.
So,
As I understand it, I think this may be addressed you have a study that may pertain to something like this. I guess I would make the case that this is in addition to Tammy Colby's memo, which you have already, which is supportive of this change. Though I did not check it specifically with her, it's just the idea is, yeah. It is also referenced in the task force on the implementation of pupil weighting factors report. So there is actually already a study that looked at this. So it's in this study, it's on page 33. I could quote this if that would be useful, but I don't think I need to. I think it's sufficient to know that this has already been looked at, and I think it's right to make this change.
okay. I think we've had 4 days with this bill. And this is Rebecca Holcomb's proposal. It was rejected in the other body. There's an issue there, and we put it on our study committee to look at. But I've also been told that there would be some schools that would be seriously hurt, mostly very small schools in our poorer areas, so. And this committee did not do the weighting. So we have no basis to start changing the weights because we know nothing. The place to do that would be GovOps because they did the weights. That's where it came from. We got handed it whole cloth and we dealt with the phase in, which then got radically undone in the other body, but, we've tried to limit ourselves this year to trying to help towns survive this year and then to come back next year, 6 months from now, with some proposals about the formula, about the issues. And so we put that, and we could refine the language perhaps, but we put that in the study to look at. So, because it's a complex formula, and if you push it here, it's gonna pop up there. So we think we just need time to make
Which
sure.
is actually the hope the outcome I'm hoping for, but fair enough.
Yes, I mean, we're trying to do no harm.
Did, Senator Hardy, I believe, led the weighting study group, correct?
He's one of the authors in this report.
Okay, but
Is she, so for to get to the punchline in life, but has she's not here offering the amendment. Did you talk to her about going through the amendment?
I did, and she is, and my apologies, she is one of the co-chairs.
okay. But you just,
Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. We were talking a bit. She did not have time to review.
right,
She sounded like she was very interested, she didn't have time to read it, but in talking about it with her, she sounded sort
well,
of.
I think we
I
found
don't
out
understand.
this year that in doing the weights, perhaps we didn't do it absolutely perfectly. And again, I think we need to look at what was the result of some of the newer categories, what happened with school spending. How did the schools that were the losers survive? What did the winners do with their extra voting or, budget capacity?
Yeah, why did the issue come out during the weighting study? Because I don't recall, I was on the committee, and I don't recall this big.
Oh.
At all.
Misunderstanding.
It is in the report. Yeah, it's on page 33.
Yeah,
Um,
I made a note to go look
Okay.
at it. I don't always pay attention.
I don't know,
Yeah, this
beyond that.
I remember
That
reading
bill
this.
had very greased skids when it
Yeah.
came through here.
Yeah.
There had been a lot of work that went into it. I had Senator Chittenden, then Senator Bray, then Senator Robbins.
Really quick, I think I heard you say that I think you said we have seen communities close schools. That's the first I've heard of it, or did I misinterpret it? You're really saying that now with this new pupil weight, there might be a looming incentive to possibly close schools.
The latter is what I meant. If I said the former, I'm not sure that right, I don't know of any places that have closed schools to this end, but it does create an incentive to close.
And I think the concern is you could close the school rather than merge with another school. And then you end up with kids going to private schools or some of them. And we're losing ground with public schools, and we do have an issue with that. And it's another one that has no simple answers, and I'll gladly let the education committee.
Right, this would not apply to, say, the town in a union district.
Yeah. Okay, Senator Bray, please.
Yeah, it's like, it's just that time of year where it gets. The prudence, my prudent side always says, if we don't know the implications of something adequately, and it's a major change. And things have been, there have been opportunities to work on these things for 2 years, but I'm, by predisposition, sort of fearful and inclined not to want to make changes to something as, profoundly complex and nuanced as the weighting system, in here, in this committee, in this committee. That's all.
The only thing I wanted to say, just to bring the spirit of our education chair in here, is that I think Senator Hardy was appointed to that task force before she became chair of government operations. That it was more her role of education and finance, and
Yeah.
so I still want to put it back squarely in the intersection between finance and education, and this does have education policy implications for, what students and families can currently expect for the choices that they have. And so, of course, it matters to me what senators feel which way about this, but particularly, I believe Senator Campion, as chair of education, does not support this and would not want us to make this decision on behalf of the education committee.
I think, that without having time to know what we were doing.
Right.
It's dangerous to do.
Yes,
something.
and it's not a gut off.
Well, yeah, it is impact on education. There's policy, and there's also tax, ed fund kind of implications with this too. So we do need to look at it and do that. Thinking committee, I'm not hearing support for going forward with this at this point. I think it's on the list,
Yes.
and hopefully by next year, we will have the answers we need.
Well, the only question is, in the short term, what damage will occur? Right, from your perspective.
From my perspective, it would be that we end up particularly benefiting places that may not need it. And so my worry is that we're going to be potentially needlessly increasing costs on the remaining districts that do operate schools.
Do you have any sense of the magnitude?
I don't have a sense of the magnitude, but in terms of, on principle and logic, seems like it's a change that would make sense to me.
Okay. Okay. Who's next?
Thank you.
Okay, I will sing my tea.
If you want the amendment, copy back.
I have, if you wanna pass it around, just wanna try, this is mine.
This is first, okay, yeah. Okay, this is big, okay.
It is a big one.
There you go.
Indeed, 11,
It'll take us,
at least I don't know, 2 hours. to
Okay.
go through in detail.
Okay,
You have all the time in the world.
All the time in the world, okay,
okay.
thank you.
This is the commission. And I assume you heard me say we put the Senate Ed's version of this commission into our amendment. So if our amendment passes, and I have no reason to think that section of it won't, then the Senate Ed amendment will be in the bill.
My understanding is it'll be pushed off for a year, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
we did that because right now we have a crisis in funding. We can't get budget passed. We're quite sure that some people are going to lose their homes because they can't pay. We need to do a serious look at that. We, I think our thinking was we would do the financial foundation and then next year, once the legislators, because the output is a bill. Then once you know what the foundation is gonna be, the fiscal, then you can build on that with the commission. So that was our thinking.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is Senator Martine LaRock Hewlett here, Vice Chair of Senate Education, and I just want to say thank you for having me today. It's a thrill to be in this auspicious committee, Senate Finance. I've only walked by the door on the outside. I've never been in here, so this is wonderful. Thank you. I know, I guess I need to visit more often, but thank you so much. I wanted to come and speak on behalf of the Commission on Education. This was something that I really encouraged the House to do. It's something that I think is incredibly important. It really came from, for me, frustration in trying to make legislation, write legislation, pass legislation within a system that doesn't seem to have a North Star, a strategic plan, a guiding vision, and I found it extremely frustrating. Things like trying to pass a literacy bill and being told, well, you can't do that because the legislature's not allowed to set curriculum. Well, it's not curriculum, it's a teaching method. Well, the legislature's not allowed to set a teaching method. Okay, I mean, so, but just to give you examples of the kinds of complexities. We want to pass the PCD legislation, but where's the money coming from? Who knows? What's the structure of the program? Not clear.
With school construction.
Right, and then the moratorium, and there were just a lot of roadblocks in the way of trying to do good work to advance our public education and our education system writ large in the state of Vermont. So I was really hopeful that putting together this group of folks to really think about where we're going strategically and do some hard work. And I mean, I know I'm naive, but not political work, but like really digging into education and what's best for our taxpayers, what's best for our kids, what's best for the landscape in general. So I would sort of beseech you all to not put this work off for a year. I think it's incredibly important that we get started on this now. And I would also posit that this work shouldn't be decoupled from the financial piece of the puzzle. I believe the two are intertwined in many, many ways. And to try to separate them, I think we're gonna end up with a product that is not gonna be robust in the long term. I really believe that. I don't think that there is a magic bullet to suddenly get all of our taxes to go down. Unless someone can get healthcare costs way down, that would be a huge one. But this, that this is death by 1,000 cuts. This is not one thing, it's not two things. And it's gonna require a really complex set of lenses and folks coming to a table to really dig into it. That's my thinking. So I mean, I like the House bill. I don't dislike it. But when I heard that you were going to be putting together this a group to work just on the financial piece and putting off the commission, I really thought that I would at least make a proposal to put in the work that we did in Senate education as an amendment option.
We've done that. We didn't touch your amendment. I think we've had a financial problem. We know that we're the second highest spending per pupil. And with this last increase, we are probably the highest spending. We have the highest ratio. I think the concern is this year, we've got to find a way to get that cost down. And the commission was so broad and so, if, you know, you can, teachers, you know, you love kids and you get caught up in what you want to do. And we were afraid that how you pay for it could get lost. And so we tried to do that sequencing. So if we can get the costs under control, then we have a lot better way, a more affordable way to say, because our kids we're paying Ivy League prices and our kids are not getting an Ivy League education. We just. You know, our readiness, our, you know.
I hear you. We're often, named fourth in the nation for education. I mean, I've seen quite a few, studies that have
I've been seeing the test scores.
Yeah, fourth.
If you
The nation.
compare
Oh, where
us to
we
the
did
rest of the
the
country.
Exactly.
Are we
Um,
still
Is
there?
that just based on high school graduation rate stuff?
no, I think that's test scores across the board. Yeah. So I hear you. We do have a financial crisis. Again, I think we also have an education crisis. I think there's a lot going on that needs to be fixed. There's a very, very powerful narrative out there and I don't think it's helping, solve the problem, unfortunately. I think there are other ways to look at this in a more holistic fashion, and I think that's what this does. There is in section D of the bill, you know that there's the education funds piece that, as part of this commission, will look specifically at money. And I mean, I won't read it to you, but it's in there.
Yeah, we saw that in there. I think it was just the concern that it would get lost. And that this has been the most painful year I've been through. And I don't want to go through having my school budget go down. I don't want to go through listening to my daughter as her school budget has about to go down the third time. And unless we can get those, it's not cost, I think it's structure. And I think you need to get that under control because people out there that are paying the bills just aren't focused. They're
Yeah.
focused right now on their retirement savings and their mortgage and all the rent.
That's
not
structure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I agree with
They're
you.
complaining about not structure, they're not complaining about the structure, they're complaining about the cost.
About the cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we gotta do something about the cost, so they can,
I would disagree that.
What we suggest.
well, that's what we're going to do. Okay.
I just wanna make sure we're all looking at and talking about the same thing. So the amendment we're looking at here is the original House proposal, but then you all edited it and modified it in Senate Education. And that's what's here, because we actually never got that, right?
Yes, we did.
I don't,
And this is what is on our floor amendment.
I don't think it is. It is, okay. Cause we never talked, I thought Senate Education never took possession. So I don't know how.
They did. Senate Education sent us a proposal
Okay.
that changes. And that is, remember Friday night, we didn't want to do away with all their hard work.
Mhm,
So we worked over the weekend with emails on
mhm,
possible language for our study.
mhm.
And then on Monday, we adopted the Senate
Okay,
our education committee's proposal.
Okay,
So if you look at our amendment, it has section 1A is us, I think it's 1A, maybe one, and then 1B is theirs. And
okay.
1C is where we steal the money back from the education department,
In what's on the floor.
and that's what's on.
So my second question is that I think it's the year 2024, right? I just need to do a check on that. And this all still says 2025. That intentional?
That's what we have as the effective date.
It's in
The first meeting, July 15th, 2025. And ours will be July 15th or somewhere there in 2024, so that we're running in sequence.
Cause I thought the whole thing was that people were upset that a year would go by before this commission
Yes.
began.
Yes,
So you want it to be 2024,
yes,
Okay.
sorry.
cause otherwise it's like, I think we could pass the
Apologies,
You know.
yes, 2024.
I
Okay,
just don't think we can have the staffing or anything to do two major studies in the same year. We'd be drawing on a lot of the same people. We're having up to 30 meetings. That's a lot of meetings. We're up to 15. It's,
Okay, I hear you, I would have just, my last ditch effort is just that, we do need to contain, costs of education, I do not disagree with you, I think that containing the cost of education is directly connected to the structure. I think the structure and the cost containment go together, and I think we could do things like right now to contain costs, and we all know what they are. Unfortunately, they're politically fraught,
they are,
but they would contain costs, and we could do them
I
relatively.
think what we're doing is we're containing costs by cutting back on what schools can spend. And that's going to impact the quality of education. We've got to get the structural issues under control so that then we can free up the money that's available for education. Yes,
Structurally, no one has identified what's out of control, other than they believe that the spending is out of control.
spending is out of,
So, but there's been no suggestions on how to cut spending, which is simply to shrink the yield and see how the schools deal with it.
well, that's why we're having this study committee, Senator, so we can actually sit down and focus on how do you do that? Because I've had this bill for 4 days. I think we're down to 7 or 8 bills up there I don't have time during the session to do
No,
it.
I'm sure, if all you have to do is shrink the yield, it's a matter of picking a number.
No, that's the game plan we've been doing.
We
It
have
doesn't,
a yield, which is you get to spend what you want, and this is the yield you have to work with.
we set the yield based on spending and the amount of money in the ed fund and the amount of money we need to raise from the property tax. Once we've put in all the sales tax revenue and rooms and meals tax revenue and we are raising $50 million to buy down, but it's mostly. We're buying down the tax rate this year, but half that money is not there next year.
So you change, if you want schools to spend less,
You lower.
and you
the
want
yield.
the towns to vote on their budgets, and you don't cut the money going to the towns, they're gonna continue to do what they're doing, and I don't object to the current system, but it's equitable. It's
Yeah,
folks get to vote on how much they choose to spend, given the yield. And many of the concerns that you articulate are accurate, because the folks are worried about losing their homes, et cetera. On the other hand, our test 40 states in the country would be envious of having the test scores that we put out in national tests. It's not that we're doing a bad job, it's. When you say you're spending too much money, the way to spend less money is to make less money available and let the towns decide for themselves how they're gonna deal with that.
Well,
I don't know that I've advocated that, but that's
okay.
what you do.
That is one of the suggestions that was made and was being looked at and was in the yield bill in the House. Was something similar to Representative Beck, which is a adequacy payment, which is what the rest of the country does in some form.
But we could make, what's the adequate yield?
Well, we could,
If you do,
but if you do that, at some point, it affects the quality of education.
well, certainly,
Okay,
that's, they're linked.
yeah.
Yeah.
But there's other levers you can pull. And that's what we're going to work out in the study committee.
Someone hasn't suggested a lever.
Bunch of others.
Lots of levers.
Okay, I'm gonna make a proposal that I've made before, but in the interest of everything we've been hearing today from people who really want us to honor this study, but also recognizing that it's not necessarily good to start a 2-year commission in an election year when you don't know what will happen to the House and Senate member that you appoint. I'm just gonna put a date out there that I think would be a compromise for this, recognizing that any proposals that staff help generate for this, the finance study committee would generally be somewhat baked, we would hope, by January. So I would propose we accept this as friendly, but as section 2, with the date of January 31st, 2025 to start the commission. It's gonna take them a while to appoint people. It's gonna take them a while to get to know each other and have the first meeting. That's all I'm trying to do to
I don't
recognize that
think
people.
we have ever set up a major study committee on which there are legislators that takes place during the legislative session. We don't know what kind of staff burden we're going to have next year. We don't know how many staff we're gonna have.
But this commission isn't a legislatively staffed.
No, it is not
It's
legislatively
AOE.
staffed, but it has legislators on it.
Right.
And it is being paid for with tax dollars.
Yes, I guess we just don't always need to go by our calendar, which is a little bit bizarre
Okay.
compared to other calendars.
Committee,
What did we do last time?
what was
Last time we had a commission
We changed the education formula and policy and how we pay for it.
at 60 or at 46.
60 and the subsequent at 68. We appoint commissions.
No, I think people got beers and like decided to throw some formulas out there, basically. I mean, I don't remember commissions.
We've got a proposal. Questions on the proposal?
So what we did this morning is really forming this July with a report this coming December, which would then, like, is that correct?
That's St. James Office of Legislative Counsel. When you say our, what are you talking about?
The new composition of a working group that we compiled this morning is the first part of our.
The Education Finance Study Committee.
Yes.
Correct.
And that will bring forward legislation to be considered by the legislators that are elected to office this coming January.
Correct.
And you're saying January 31st to start this new group 31 days later.
That has 2 years.
We're gonna have to hear, I think, from council as to whether or not they can staff that.
But it's
Or
not a.
staff, because they'll,
I just don't know the logistics of the staffing and if January 31st is the right time in fitting it into the workloads. But I like that ours is aggressive. I like our timeline. Because this is what the voters are telling me they want us to be looking at.
This is AOE contracting with consultants. It's not legislative council staff.
As long as we get first dibs on the money, they get what's left.
Will that
So
happen?
they may find that they don't have the money to do this. If the money's going to folks to be appropriated.
Do January 31st pending available resources.
On budget
The
adjustment.
budget adjustment, I would have to consider it then, so I'm.
Committee,
But if you do both task force, both groups that are operating at the same time, that
They're not.
This would be sequential.
it would be sequential, so you would do this financial piece first, is that it? And then beginning January first, you would do
31st.
31st, the commission for all times.
Yeah, I mean, we act like our legislative session is like the sun in the universe, and for most people, it's like if they have 2 years, it might as well run from January to December of 2026, which is how it would be sequenced if you left everything else in the same place.
Senator Brave, thoughts?
You know, I appreciate the steadiness of what we've already done. Again, I think I'm finding the mode of, feeling it's what we worked on. I'm happy with where we're at, and as much as we've had many good conversations about these things, and I'm sympathetic and interested. I'd like to stick with what we already have where it comes from.
Senator McDonald, what are your thoughts?
If you want to pay less, you have to have designed to represent it back as a program which picks an adequate amount of money to operate the schools, which is paid for by the entire grand list of the state. And then if you want to spend more, a whole bunch of that grand list of the state is no longer on the table and just homeowners are. That's his plan.
Well, that is the plan that was presented to us. That is among the plans that the school finance study committee will be looking at. The question is, do we start a school futures committee on January 31st while the legislature is in session? That's the proposal before us. We have it starting July 1st.
But I'm sure the goal is to spend less money.
That's our goal.
Beck has a way to spend less
But
money.
that has nothing to do with this discussion. This discussion is about when the Commission on the Future of Education starts meeting. It has nothing to do with Representative Beck and the funding formula. They may get to that. We will get to it in the school finance study committee. If that's where we decide to go, then that will inform the other committee about what they have to work with as they plan the future. But we are not going to know that by January 31st.
I just don't think we have to know it by January 31st if they have 2 years. They can still be appointed in the time frame we're meeting. They can start to look at what we're doing and come up with, and they can do that knowing that this will be their responsibility.
They can do that now.
Well, we don't know who's appointed.
It's every education system, it's for legislators.
Well, to Mark's point, we could do it now to figure out who's good payment.
We've got all the witnesses to call in to ask about.
Okay,
Spend less money.
I'm gonna do.
Keep the set sources.
I'm gonna do a show of hands. All those in favor of moving the date to January 31st, 2025. It is presently July 1st. Raise your hands. Okay, I don't have the votes for that.
Just that. Wasn't voting either way on that.
I still
Okay,
don't have
being
the
alone.
look.
Yeah,
One
I still don't
extension.
I think Jake McCormick
And I
would
will
join
throw
the
another bomb into the room. I don't think this Commission on Education is a function that should stand alone in terms of the solution of the state's fiscal problems. We've said over and over again for years that if we do something about education finance, we have to simultaneously address the other two legs of our financial situation. In other words, we have to deal with income taxes, we have to deal with consumption taxes as well as education taxes, because if you fiddle with one, it has a follow-on effect of the other. And we haven't thought through, again, the issue of how we do what we started doing in 2010 and never finished right.
Okay. I think we've got an answer. Is there anybody out there with more proposed amendments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This is on the yield bill, right?
Yes,
I will very possibly have an amendment in the morning
okay,
that's being worked on, supposedly has been worked on all day, and I don't have it yet.
okay. We have a committee conference meeting at 9:30 and Natural Resources is meeting at 9.
We're also meeting at 8:45. You just missed the presentation of an amendment to ratify this.
Oh, okay, I did not get that.
Well, I'm kind of leaving it open for amendments that come up and concurring with House on things.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for-
Committee, we have one other thing on the agenda.
Senator Cummings, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
For generating a discussion.
Committee, I need quiet.
That's St. James Office of Legislative Counsel. Before you move off of H 887,
Yes,
I was not here this morning when you all voted on your amendment. So I would like to confirm who is a sponsor for that amendment.
Senator Ron Hinsdale and Senator McCormick are not on it. And when I took it up, I crossed off their names.
Okay,
I checked with Senator Gray.
okay, so
Okay.
it's all taken care
Yes.
of. Okay, great,
Should
thank you.
be. That's what I told them upstairs, but I'll know when it gets published in the
There may be more.
on the
off by
calendar.
tomorrow morning.
There may be more. Okay, Senator Bray, I don't know what to tell you. I have a feeling if we're doing the yield bill, we are not gonna get off. I don't know. Actually, do you know if we've got a hard stop?
You're talking about tomorrow on the floor?
Yeah, there's a committee dinner at 6:30 and
Yeah, we can talk offline, or what are you asking for, just so I'm clear, are you talking
just
about
whether or not it should happen. It's not this committee, it's.
whether what should
For
happen?
example, the only day of the week that people were all done was
Mhm.
Wednesday, so Wednesday started a little later than some people suggested, 6:30, you could always call back. Just trying to see if we can reasonably be finished, so we could be out in there.
Finish on the floor or in committee?
I've got 7 bills
Here.
tomorrow.
I figured we'd done them before, we're back in here, we're running away.
And we will try and knock these out as quickly as possible.
I have a related constraint tomorrow night. I have to leave here by 6:30 to conduct a final exam for 150
Okay.
students.
So I've got 2 out at 6:30.
Are you done with committee? We could adjourn and then discuss this.
We've got one last
Okay,
thing.
gotcha.
Maria has
Okay.
been sitting here, so we will go through. I'm not sure who's proposed changes, and Mr. Whitaker.
I got this. And on that point, I can zoom back in while the kids are taking the test. If that
Oh, okay.
was be hard for me to talk.
I just,
You could just do a thumbs up, thumbs down.
what I don't wanna personally be responsible for as a member of this committee is killing a bill by clock and knowing that it won't get rules tomorrow. So is there anything that we know won't get rule suspension that we should?
I have no idea. We will talk about that when we finish
Okay,
this.
I just didn't wanna leave it
Okay,
like
So
something.
I've got- okay, and these are amendments
different.
to
For
six,
drafting purposes.
this is
Same
amendments to
substance.
657. Who, they are being proposed by you.
This is for
Now you
me
want-
to bring forward to you all as a potential substitute amendment to our finance report on the telehealth.
This is your personal amendment,
Looking at 1.1,
all right,
For consideration here.
okay.
Did everyone get?
1.1.
We've got
Come in both
two,
directions.
I've got two pieces of paper.
It should be the same thing. This is just drafted as a substitute.
It's the same.
You're doing 2.0.
So I'm doing 1.1 of H657.
The big piece.
1.1.
You got that?
The staple.
Staple. Okay, let's let Maria tell us what's happened. And then Senator Chittenden can tell us why he wants it to happen. And then we shall decide if it will happen. Okay,
Sounds great. Maria Royal with Legislative Council. So there are basically two substantive amendments. The third concerns the effective dates. So the first instance of amendment concerns property taxes on communications property. You'll remember that. Yes. Just FYI, the Universal Service Fund provisions that you agreed to, the House passed, not all here. Those first 6 sections of the bill would stay as passed the House. And as favorably viewed by the committee. Property taxes. You ended up in the finance report asking for the department to do a study to determine
Because they
what should be
told us
taxed at
they-
fair market value, what should be business personal property, and come back in January.
I don't know.
This proposal here amends the House language, so no study moves forward with the House language with one change. You'll remember that Jill Remick, the Director of Property Valuation Review, suggested for the definition of communications property, make it a little bit narrower. Remember, this was
right,
the whole
the period of the
discussion.
towers.
Exactly.
And we did that until they came in and said they didn't think they had the capacity, once their tech people looked at it, to do that. So we put it to a study. Now they've come back and said they can do it.
That, I don't know their position. Senator Chittenden can probably speak.
I can speak to that. So
Okay.
as I was preparing the floor report for this, as it was making its way through appropriations, I wanted confirmation. So I reached out to Jill Remnick, and I do have an email thread where exactly to your point, Chair Cummings, is Jill Remnick, as she put in her email thread, which I can dig up and quote, said that she was really asking for one of two things to happen. Either the report that we did or put the period there after towers or after towers. So she said either one is what we were asking for. And other than that, that was my interpretation, and I will dig
Obviously, the committee just will hear that.
with property value.
Valuation and reviews. Okay, they'll have to be the ones that will be evaluating these things. All right,
So she doesn't want to evaluate that, she just wants to.
no, what they're saying is they don't have capacity, and I can go back and find the bill, but we agreed to do that before they came back and said that they didn't think they could do it. So now they're saying they can, as long as I forget what we didn't get in there, it was capacitors and something. Sounded like Back to the Future.
Machinery, distribution hubs, splitters, switching equipment, routers, servers, power equipment, and any other network equipment is what they asked us to drop.
Drop
because
out.
What's in the other hand?
Okay, this has nothing to do with poles and wires and the inventory. That's coming next.
That's,
Yeah.
well, the first. Not,
This is what we tax.
that's. We're talking about an inventory, and I'm doing a tax.
We're doing a tax. This is section 2. We haven't gotten to the inventory. This is right now,
I'll be patient.
other than towers, I think, but most of this is taxed as business personal property. The House has asked us to tax it as real property. Therefore, it goes on to the grant list for the towns, and it goes into the ed fund, and I think 600,000 was, but that was taxing everything, so it may be somewhat less. The question was, do they have how do you put a real value on a switcher? And whether or not they could do it, and it moves it to fair market value, right?
Yes.
And they came back and said it was highly fluid market with high, and all kinds of new things happened all the time. But apparently they've changed their minds, so.
I think with the narrow definition,
Yeah.
things that are considered have a longer life cycle maybe than some of the other.
The tower probably did, yeah. Okay. Okay, so they've changed their mind, they're asking us to go back to where we first settled, which was Liberty, all right.
So then the third subject of the House bill concerned the right of way.
That's yours.
Correct. And what you proposed is basically a study. But also a detailed inventory of everything in the right of way. And you asked the Secretary of Transportation, working with GIS, to do a right of way GIS database of all utility infrastructure, including broadband infrastructure in the right of way, based on GIS specifications. And not just the state-owned right of way, but the municipal right of way. So one big database, and then they would have until July of 2026 to complete that database.
Use the data.
And then later that year in December, you ask the agency, the Secretary of Transportation, to then come back with a recommendation for imposing a right of way fee on property that's in. So that was your proposal. The proposal here is also to do a study, but much narrower. It has the Secretary of Transportation working with the Commissioner of Public Service and the Secretary of Digital Services, which is where VGI is housed, shall conduct a study concerning the use of access to the right of way in Vermont, the state right of way, not municipal, specifically by telephone, wired and wireless companies and broadband companies. So not looking at electric, not looking at cable television.
We already do. Well, we don't know what electric's in the right of way, but we do tax poles.
Well, I think actually the agency has been waiving the fee, which they're allowed to do under federal law. So this is just narrowed to looking at communications use.
We do taxes. Real
Property,
property,
yes.
yes, and why?
Yeah, yeah.
We do not do a right of way fee at this time because they have been.
They've opted as
Possibly good have.
So in particular, the secretary will determine how the right of way is currently being used by telecom providers and shall review and assess how other jurisdictions outside Vermont manage and charge for such access and use. So the study, and they would report back in October of 2025.
So we will know what poles are in the right of way. What. We're not doing electric, so we're doing what, telephone? And wireless.
Well, it may,
Wireless isn't hung on a.
no, but there are cell towers and there are antennas, the small cell facilities that are attached to the poles. And when you say we're not doing electric, you might be looking at those poles because attachments are on those poles, whether they're wires or wireless. So that will be part of the,
Okay.
that would be part of the scope of looking at how are they using the right of way now? And what do other jurisdictions do? And report back in October of 2025.
I think I understand what's being suggested to go out and count and measure and assess the what's out there in the right of way. And the question I would ask, which I think this committee needs to ask, is what is the problem that going out and doing this assessment, this inventory, what is the problem that is being solved? What's the goal? How will this be useful?
I don't know.
I don't either. And if we're gonna spend a lot of money doing this, can we at least articulate how this will change the world and make this a better place? Or it will be used in this fashion?
We just spent 3 months on this. We spent a lot of time on this bill. For some reason, I don't have any recollection of doing it. It may have gone through in a transportation bill. We told the Department of Transportation to charge a fee for poles in the right of way, unless they gave an exemption due to greater public good. Well, they've always given the exemption. That got a letter from the auditor saying you told them, and everybody saying you told them to charge, and they aren't charging. You need to make them pay.
So then the purpose is to collect taxes on this stuff.
That's how it started out. When it came out of us, we seemed to think it was more important for public safety and emergency management to know what was in our right of way. And we decided that until we knew what was there and how much was there, we wouldn't make a decision on charging. We also asked that the department required that the small munis, we know GMP, VEC and WEC, they know where their poles are. We don't know where Topsom and Northfield and Franklin are. So we're requiring that they report to the Department of Public Service, and then just ships it over to the GIS folks so that we have a map of where all the poles and wires are.
We're not asking for that, apparently, we're just asking for the ones in the right of way.
Well, that was part of the discussion. Part of it is we should know what's out there in case there is an emergency. And so that's what we asked for. And it was I'm not sure, did we ask for everything on the poles?
So you did ask for all utilities and broadband providers to participate in providing data, the data GIS format. And you included, for the right of way, you included the state and municipal rights of way, so the state system
And that
for
just
local roads.
kind of happened. I remember expressing concern that was pretty mammoth.
Yeah, the concerns were also expressed that it appeared that some things were not in the right of way, because we started looking at the maps, there were things in the right of way, there were things, at least we can identify right now, that were not in the right of way that are part of this infrastructure. And the other question that ultimately, I think we discussed, although very briefly, was what is all this gonna cost? And is the cost likely to exceed what we may get in revenue from taxing the stuff in the right of way in the first place? And so what's the?
That discussion did happen.
Yeah, so that was point one. The other point that is of concern, and we added some language about confidentiality of results, but I'm still concerned about the national security and other implications of the data, and do the people who are collecting this data actually have the ability to adequately protect the information that they get? Because this is very valuable information if somebody wants to disrupt something.
Could be,
You,
okay,
senators
That's
articulated the dilemma,
yes,
which is if you're gonna do a backup system for 9/11 and redundancy, et cetera, you also have to solve the confidentiality.
mhm,
And if you say you're not gonna do the inventory for what's out there, you're not gonna solve the
okay.
emergency management.
This this bill did not start out to solve emergency
I
management.
don't care what it's gonna, how's it gonna end?
There is, we were told, a emergency management department is doing a study of all the emergency, including redundancy in the 911, and they are doing their own mapping. This started out as the state should know what is in the state right of way. Most of the stuff out there is not in the state right of way, it's nowhere near the state right of way. This was limited to how many poles are in that ditch
Mhm.
along Route 62. You know, and it would be expensive because you were going to have to go out and look at every pole and measure it from the center line. Because that's how you discern the right of way, and I can guarantee you, we're gonna have some poles that are half in and half out of the right of way.
To be absent some analysis of, is this worth the expenditure? I really question if it needs to be done. You know, you got somebody else who is looking at the issue of connectivity piece.
Okay, Senator,
Really quick on that point, so Rob White testified multiple times, because this is a V-Trans specific issue that was fired, he said, this will cost the state $500,000 to figure out, and that's how much we might take in revenues, but what's important that's not in that statement is what this language that is in our current finance report, but also costs the electric, natural gas, and all communications companies. It would cost them a ton of time to get their tape measures out, figure out what's in the right of ways. And if we don't quite know what we want to do with this yet, that's one of the big concerns with the language that got out of our committee.
yes, and we've limited it,
This
This fixes it.
it fixes it.
the substitute.
It replaces the GIS database that you
Yeah.
included, it replaces it with just V-Trans. Doing a study, looking at how the right of way is used by communications providers and looking at how others.
I'm starting to wonder why we spent like 6 weeks on this.
In our defense, we had to get it out because the yield bill was coming, and so we did move it. We knew that it was gonna go to committee conference, so we were expecting some of this to come back.
Senator Robinson.
So I think eventually there's a fairness issue at play that we do tax other things for the public good in the right of way. We looked at a chart of our history of, you know, over centuries taxing things that follow the right of way.
I
And
did not remember this. We had a chart of things we tax in the right of way. Yeah, I haven't seen that.
it's like the universal service fund or. I now recycle all my
That
paper.
has nothing to do with things in the right of
That's
way.
on service, that's on telecom service.
Okay, but it basically spelled out
There
the
are
differences
more
between the things
cable-
we tax.
There, more cable. There is a franchise fee because it does use
The right way.
the public right of way. Yes, but not the state V-Trans right of way necessarily. Because
It's just that's the bargain that the
Yeah.
state made. You're allowed to collect up to 5% of cable television revenue. And that gives the providers use of the right of way. Vermont has made the choice to give all of that money to the paid access providers, so it doesn't go to V-Trans or anything, but it's those things. So that is top, that was a
have
tax
great
rate made.
control over what we can charge or do
The amount
Okay.
that's control, where it goes,
is
is a big part.
So that's, we got some money as cable TV came in by charging the franchise fee. But it's not because they've got a right of way through my backyard, but it's their right of way, not the state right of way. But I'm sure that's the right of way they're getting charged for. Or,
No,
no,
That's not the
no,
fault.
you have that
Only
5% is in lieu of right of way fees, so,
okay,
right?
okay,
And that's why they're exempted from
from this.
the House proposal to start collecting it.
Okay.
So let's not spend any more time. I just think this is it getting us towards the parity. And it fixes something we did that's more onerous. And maybe we should call it to question.
It's going back, well, we don't have a question, this is Senator Chittenden's proposal. We can stand up on the floor and say the committee supports it, or the committee doesn't support it.
Right.
Part of what I was told was that V-Trans didn't feel they had the staffing to do this. It is going to be very time consuming, because you've got to go check every single right of way to see if there's poles and where they are and how many feet from the center line.
To me, we shouldn't do it unless we know there's a likely return on investment, but I haven't seen that. And again, is it necessary to provide us with the comfort from a public security standpoint. And again, we have a project underway that's designed to do that. Do they need to do this in order to achieve that? And I don't know the answer to that, but they don't seem to think that they do.
I think what we've got is we know where the poles are, at least for the big three, and if we go through, we'll know where the little ones are. But we don't know which one of those poles is sitting in a we know where the right of ways are. But we saw the GIS thing of the neighborhood, Montpelier, and we then in. You couldn't, you knew where the center line was, but you don't have the accuracy, so you can measure however many feet from the center line that particular pole was. So the GIS testimony was they'd have to go out and measure them because they aren't that accurate as GIS.
I forgot that one more important aspect to this. Senate Transportation did consider this because it's entirely there, and the Senate Transportation fully supports this substitute amendment, and Michelle Bloomhauer, the representing agency, also supports the new language. That I'm proposing.
Is this committee going to support this amendment?
We just vote on it.
There's another amendment here,
No, this is a committee discussion with a committee member bringing us a proposal. Members of the public don't bring in proposals. There can be floor proposals.
The transportation department doesn't seem to have an interest in what's outside the right of way. Is that a correct assessment?
It's not in their charge and not in the statute that inspired this.
We are the ones who write the charge. Why would we write a charge to inventory half of what's out there? When we are the people who regulate the telecommunications business and deal with emergency management and redundancy. What?
We
Why-
know, Senator, what's out there. The GIS testimony was, at least for the big three, they know where their poles are. We wanted to charge the companies for being in the right of way. That's why we were interested in the right of way. We know there are poles. We just don't know how many feet from the center line they are.
I don't.
We know where the poles
I
are.
don't think it matters how many feet they are from the center line when you're designing a system of 911 of what happens when some poles here or there are down.
Senator, that's not what this bill does. If you want a bill that does that, we can work on it. This bill went in specifically as a response to the fee not being collected on poles in the right.
I want a bill that does that, and apparently that's not what has been proposed, and that's not what the senators are interested in, so I'm finished my
Thank you.
concerns.
But it's 2 days before adjournment and it is 6:20 at night. I'm not sure, no one said they're not interested in that. That isn't what this bill does, and it isn't what this bill ever did. Senator Brock.
Two things. I am not comfortable that we know what this is gonna cost and whether there's a return on investment in getting a return on doing the work. So that's the first problem. The second problem is I don't know the urgency of knowing this information in the event that we are able to determine whether or not we have sufficient backup redundancy, et cetera, in order to deal with our emergency communication needs, and whether there are means other than doing this detailed inventory at an extremely high cost is worth it.
I think that's,
And until we do, I don't think we should do it.
I think that's what this bill is asking for. It's asking to let them study it, to look at what other states do.
Your concerns really are applicable to
Mhm.
current
Well, we-
finance.
Yeah.
And this really, I think, addresses your concerns.
Steve,
Because it
we do
scales it
not
back to
pass
something
things to our draft.
That is feasible
And we
and
don't pass things to members of the
to
committee.
your other point. We'll also address a statute inconsistency where we are dictating for them to collect revenue on something that they say would cost way too much to do. And so this is asking them to look at how other states. So I think this.
Look at how other states do it. I would say it is fine, but it's. Does your amendment actually tell us what this would cost to do the inventory? Or are you just putting the inventory off to the side?
It informs V-Trans how they will come back with a benchmarking of other states, how they collect fees for right of ways. And that is going to inform the decision as to whether or not it's worth doing a full-fledged, complete inventory of communications and anything else in the right of ways. So it's an incremental step to be, which I think addresses your concern, so that it won't commit to actually spending a great deal of time, energy, and resource until we have a better idea of how
How
this.
determine how the right of way is currently being accessed. I interpreted that to mean that you're going to have to do some detail work to do that. Is that not the case? If that's not the case, I could be fine with it. But that's what I read.
I don't sense that it's a great amount of detail.
What words with,
It does have support from Michelle Boomhauer and the Agency of Transportation as something that's feasible.
What's this gonna cost, you know?
This, she says she can do within her normal scope of work, and Rob White represents the right of way department within V-Trans. So this is something that he is committed to doing as part of his normal work function.
Are you able to say that we're able to do this without an additional appropriation?
I'll say that.
appropriations are gone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, if we're able to say that, then there's no appropriation, I'd be fine with
there
it.
is no
Okay.
appropriation for this.
Okay. So am I hearing that we're going to support? We can stand up and say it's okay, I'm looking around.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing any no's, okay,
Unfriendly to.
it's a friend, okay. I think that's it for this evening.
Oh, darn.
Thank you. You want this, I got 7 more. I don't know what we're gonna do, oh, I lost Ashley.